Hi, I'm Mayor Rich Thomas. I'm with the great Mayor of Houston, Sylvester Turner. Mayor Turner, thanks for sharing your time with us, talking about what you're doing to move Houston forward.
It's good to be with you, Mayor.
Thank you. So you've been through ups. God bless the Astros and
yes.
their victory in the World Series. I'm a Yankees fan, so I just want to make sure you know that.
We thank you. We had to get past the Yankees in order to get to the Dodgers.
But you guys definitely gave Houston a big uplift following Harvey. And just can you tell us about what you're doing to move Houston forward following such a big disaster like that?
Well, last year 51 inches of rain fell on Houston and the surrounding region. Thousands of people were displaced. Mm-hmm. But we're rebounding. The spirit is strong in the city of Houston. So what the focus now is to build a stronger, more resilient city, mm-hmm. not just to put us back where we were prior to Harvey, but to make us stronger and be better prepared for the next storm. So on the local level, we are changing the way we build residential housing.
Wow.
Okay. So we are going and we'll be building higher, at least
mm-hmm.
2 feet above. We're not going to focus on a 100-year floodplain. Mm-hmm. We're looking at like the 500-year floodplain.
Okay.
But the way we construct houses going forward will be different. Now, for homeowners, it'll cost a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if we don't do it and things remain the same and you flood, you're totally going to be displaced. So it'll cost a little bit more, but in the long term, it'll be much more resilient. So that's one thing. And then at the same time, we are built on the Bayou City. Two New Yorkers in 1836 came to Houston and founded the city of Houston. So we built on the Bayou City. So now we're having to expand our channels, more capacity. And based on some modeling, if we had done that, thousands of homes would not have flooded. Wow. More regional detention basin. Mm-hmm. Same thing, a direct benefit, keeping a lot of homes from being flooded. Building of what we call a third reservoir in the area, and then we're really pushing what we call the coastal spine, because if the hurricane had hit Galveston Bay, it really would have been horrific.
Wow. And if it could have been worse.
It would have been substantially worse.
Wow.
And the impact would not have just been Houston or Texas, but a lot of the jet fuel and refinery projects in the port mm-hmm. supply the rest of the country as a whole. So everyone would have been adversely impacted if the hurricane had hit Galveston Bay. So the bottom line is, I've named a chief recovery officer, mm-hmm. I've named a chief resiliency officer, and the goal is to build the city stronger, more resilient, better prepared, and at the same time try to make sure that we don't leave anyone out from the recovery. I'm especially sensitive to our elderly population, yep. people with special needs, people in low-income communities that were already on the margins, mm-hmm. and the storm pushed them down a little bit further, and then middle-income families who literally have exhausted all of their resources to get back in their home, but they still need some help themselves.
So what can we do, I guess, in just wrapping this up, what can we do to make sure we help bridge those gaps? You mentioned the people that were already struggling, and we don't have progress without a little bit of struggle, but it seems like an insurmountable struggle following such a challenge that the climate has presented.
Well, it's my hope that the administration and Congress will provide us with the funding that we need in order mm-hmm. to build a more resilient, a stronger city. We don't just need enough funding to put us back to where we were before. Mm-hmm. And I said if they did that, that's only providing funding for failure, because there will be another storm, either in 18, 19, or 20. Mm-hmm. So we have to build stronger. And so hopefully the congressional leadership across the board will be supportive of providing us with the necessary funding. And then bear in mind, when the storm hit us, then you had Hurricane Irma that hit Florida, then Maria that hit Puerto Rico, and then you had the fires out in California. So the funding that's being proposed right now will be divided between California, Texas, Florida, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. So it's not going to be proportionally as much as others have received in past disasters,
right?
But nonetheless, we just need the funding to come as quickly as possible so that people who are needing their homes to be repaired or rebuilt can get back into their homes and get their lives back together and move forward.
Well, look, I can't thank you enough for your time, but one last question. There are a lot of young people out there that are questioning, what they're going to do next.
Yeah.
What, if anything, would you do, or would you say to them to inspire them to make sure they continue to pursue their dreams?
Well, look, let me tell you, life has its challenges. I tell anybody, you have to find your purpose. Okay, you have to find your purpose, and then you have to move forward towards it. Doesn't mean that it's going to come easy, because nothing really in life worthwhile comes easy. But it does mean that you stay focused, stay to your dream, and keep going. Look, I'm the mayor of the city of Houston, but this is my third attempt. I ran before and made it to the runoff, but fell short. I ran the second time. There were 3 people running. Hell, I was number 3, and so didn't make it then. But then I ran the third time, and now I'm the mayor of the city of Houston. So, I tell people, some people are sprinters. They run real fast, and they reach their destination very quickly. But then there are some people who are marathon runners. They have to run lap 1, lap 2, lap 3, lap 4. You have to decide, which one are you? Are you a sprinter, or are you a marathon runner? And then you stay in your lane, and you run your race.
You heard it there from the mayor of Houston, Sylvester Turner. Life is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Thank you so much for helping us move forward.
All the best to you and your city.
Same, and we got your back, even though you broke our hearts. Hi, Mayor Rich Thomas back with Mount Vernon moving forward. We're talking with the mayor of Pittsburgh, Bill Perduto. Bill, if you can just a profound, solid, smart, progressive, pragmatic leader. I had the privilege of first meeting him at the World Economic Forum in San Diego, and very privileged and honored to sit here with you again now at the National League of Cities.
Good to see you again, Mayor.
Thank you. So, what are you doing to move Pittsburgh forward?
Well, I think the challenges that we have are basically the same challenges that you see within Mount Vernon. We have issues of neighborhoods that have seen no development for decades. At the same time, seeing neighborhoods that are growing quickly, but we don't want those that went through the bad times not to see the good times. We see the challenges of trying to bring jobs and redevelop our business districts. And at the same time, as we all compete, making sure that the quality of life is there for every one of our citizens. So when we look at our neighborhoods that have been left behind, we have a lot of property when Pittsburgh went through its depression that the city owns. And we're looking for partners to be able to offer these properties and turn them from blight to opportunity.
Now, as you transition from blight to opportunity, if you can share with everyone, some of the history of Pittsburgh. Earlier today you commented on the impact of the dislocated workers based on just transformations in the workforce. And you said something pretty profound as well, which was, Pittsburgh created the first wave of displacement with the rivers, with the climate, but also other impacts within the city. So if you can just speak to some of that and talk about what's happening next.
Yeah, so in the 1850s, the city burned to the ground. In the 1930s, the city was flooded completely. In the 1970s and the 1980s, economic collapse of the greatest in American history took the city to 19% unemployment, and a city of 700,000 became a city of 300,000. We lost more people than New Orleans lost after Katrina.
Wow.
We had greater debt ratio than New York City when it went bankrupt. And we basically lost not only our industry, but for most people, they thought Pittsburgh was dead. The only way we were able to come back was through partnerships and being able to partner with our foundation community, our corporate community, our universities, even the large institutions like our hospitals. We were able to invest back in our people, and that investment now has brought us back to where we're on a global stage once again, but this time it's predictive analytics, artificial intelligence, robotics, medicine, technology, finance, in a much different economy.
So as we look at artificial intelligence, and we're here in San Francisco talking to companies from Thumbtack to LinkedIn to Microsoft, and tomorrow we're going to go see Google, all great companies that we want in our cities, but there's tremendous promise, but also tremendous peril. One of the concerns is what happens when all these advancements happen, and how do we prepare our workforce to get ready for some of the changes that are coming down the pipe?
Well, the West Coast has to learn from the East Coast because New York, Boston, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Cleveland, we were where they were 100 years ago. And we saw what happened when the new industry, when the Industrial Revolution was electrified.
Right.
And what we saw was great disparity between those that were working in the factories and those that owned them. We saw pollution that made our air dangerous to breathe and water that was poisonous to drink. But we rolled up our sleeves, we went to work, and we changed the way that government operates by investing in public housing, public education, public transportation. We created new models to make sure that our workers worked less and earned more, and we built the middle class. Now it's their turn. What are they doing now as the economy changes once again, and we're in this fourth industrial revolution? How are they recognizing it, and what are the changes that are going to make sure that it's an economy for all and not just for some? That's why we're here.
That's why we're here, and that's one of the challenges that we face. And I can tell you that we're seeing just massive changes happen right before us with the autonomous cars. Even though they're providing autonomy, they're taking it away. And as I learned from Pittsburgh, some of the sensors that you put in place for air pollution and to assist with analytics. I guess the main challenge in moving forward is getting people to recognize that these things are happening now. And one of the processes we put in place was to try and meet with stakeholder groups on a weekly basis, sometimes mainly on a monthly basis, but we make ourselves available on a weekly basis in the event folks really want to know. But I'm just curious to find out, not just from you, but from others that are attending, what else are we seeing? What else are we missing? Because these threats of joblessness are real, especially in the taxi industry and the trucking industry.
I think it's interesting because, we have mayors from all across this country representing Democratic, Republican, large cities, small cities, all the whole mix, that our message all seems to be the same, that as this economy shifts and the Silicon Valley and the West Coast starts creating this entirely new industrial revolution, we want to make sure that it benefits not only our cities but our people. And that's what Silicon Valley needs to hear, and it needs to hear it directly from mayors, not from Congress, not from governors, but from mayors saying, what are you doing to be proactive so that our citizens are not being hurt?
So one final two questions. One being, what is one of the greatest challenges, aside from the technology that's challenging the workplace today, and the needs that we know we have to invest in education, our infrastructure for tomorrow. But what are one of the current challenges that you faced recently watching the Super Bowl?
So I was going to ask, Giants or Jets?
Giants.
All right.
Oh, man, it was a hard Super Bowl.
So,
God
yeah,
bless them.
I had to be a Eagles fan for 24 hours, as the rest of Pittsburgh, because our beloved Steelers have 6 Super Bowls, the Patriots have 5, and we didn't want to see them catch up. So I'll tell you this, though. In 1943, during World War II, when it was pretty hard to field a football team, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Pittsburgh Steelers combined, and they became the Steagles. And for 2 years, the Steagles played in the NFL. So if they could play together for 2 years, I could root for them for 24.
Final question. A lot of young people watching this online. What would you recommend they do to achieve their dreams?
Work at it. It's the simple thing, perseverance. You have a dream?
Yeah.
People are going to tell you can't do it. Don't listen to them. Just every day take a step forward. You'll be surprised how far you can go if you just keep going forward. And when you get knocked down and you get knocked back 5 steps, take a day off, then take a step forward and keep moving on. Here's what movies are. Movies are like, hey, my life's great. Oh no, everything's horrible. Dun, 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 my life's great. Here's what life's like. It's like that.
That's right.
And when you're down here,
Yep.
that's when you'll discover yourself. And that's going to help you to get up there.
You heard it from Mayor Peduto, Pittsburgh. Thank you so much for helping us move forward.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Hey, Mayor, Rich Thomas back with Mount Vernon moving forward, sitting down with, a very inspirational brother, Mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, Chokwe Lumumba, and someone that has a deep history. And I'm just going to ask, the mayor to talk about a little bit about his upbringing, a little bit about his perspective, and if you can just talk about your family. Started in Detroit.
Yeah. So I was born in Detroit. My father and siblings are from Detroit. My mother's actually from D.C., but that's where our early roots are from. And my parents were both activists, and so at a certain point they made a decision to move to Mississippi, not because we had family there, but because they felt that there was work to be done in Mississippi, and so they felt like they couldn't shield their children from that movement. And so the best thing that they could offer us was a sense of understanding of a commitment to community, just as important as giving us food, water, and shelter, was giving us an understanding of community and how we needed to value family, value community, and value the community as a family.
And that's why he'll be running for president when he turns 39. and I'm with it. Look, inspirational figures are among us, and here goes one right with us right now. And just as I always say, leadership takes followership. And being at this conference talking about, just the changes in technology, just the changes around us, moving cities forward is really difficult. And especially as young mayors, having the ability to be in this very privileged and honored position. But can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing to move Jackson forward? But before you answer that, if you can just share with folks a little bit about what made you decide to run for mayor.
So as I shared, I came from an activist family, and so the importance of how we build self-determined communities has been a part of the fabric of my upbringing for quite some time. And so we've had a number of community engagement activities that we've been a part of, but you ultimately discover that there is a limited sphere in which you can work towards building self-determined communities. And so we saw electoral politics as a means of engaging people, as a means of bringing into the forefront by addressing issues that they are dealing with, issues that seem small in the grand scheme of things, but literally as a mayor you're dealing with issues like filling potholes. And how do you ultimately bridge pothole to pothole and community to community so people in Jackson, Mississippi understand why there's a community in New York that is suffering from the same infrastructure problems that they are. And ultimately you learn that you are dealing with issues that none of you control the conditions which lead to a pothole being fixed. None of you have self-determination. And so how do we change that dynamic? And so by fixing potholes, you're enabled to have larger discussions about what is really impacting your community, what really limits your growth and your prosperity. And so that's what we're trying to take advantage of.
So, I hope you're all picking up what he's putting down, because it's heavy. And I can tell you that one of the things that you mentioned was not just potholes, but the community recognizing that we share in this sacrifice, and we have, as mayors, have to acknowledge some of the losses that our community experiences. You hit a pothole, you may lose a tire, but it's not just the tire; it's your day, it's your dollars. But as you run into that, as you pointed out, how do we get here? And do we go with the community, or do we just go with the chaos? So I guess what we're getting at is, what do we do as agents of change, agents of this privilege to kind of pull people together, to connect this network of disconnects? Where do we begin to have the dialogue about reaching the awareness that we need self-determination? And then what steps do we do to make sure that we act on that awareness to become self-determined?
Well, I think, by addressing people's immediate concerns, you buy the opportunity to have deeper discussions. I think it's also important that we become disciplined listeners, hearing what people have to say and giving people more access and more say-so in their governance. Under my father's leadership. My father was mayor before I was, and he died while in office. But what he was able to do was to push what we call a 1% sales tax referendum that is helping to fund many of the infrastructure problems that we have in Jackson. And he was able to do that not just by putting the referendum up for a vote, but by going to communities and showing people these, not only the potholes that they know, but showing them the pipes, these over 100-year-old pipes that they don't see every day, and speaking of the impact. And so I believe when you give people the right information and the opportunity, they tend to make the right decisions. And so we saw a decision for people to tax themselves by 90%. People voted 90%. I can't think of another time or place where people voted by such a substantial margin in order to tax themselves. And so what you find are people who are willing and committed to make sacrifices and make hard choices, and they want leadership which demonstrates the same thing. And so we have to extend ourselves and be willing to listen. We can't be elitist from either stance, either point of the spectrum. Either elitists that we're so far disconnected from what people are feeling and experiencing, or revolutionary elitism, where we think that we understand struggle more than anybody else, that we know what people need and we know how we're going to rise out of that. We have to really buy into the idea of collective genius, that we're a lot smarter together than we are independently.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, and that's why, many of the things that we've attempted to do in Mount Vernon is to listen, learn, and lead. You listen to the people that not only have, support of your vision, but you listen to the people that don't.
Yeah.
And not only listen to them, but you hear them deeply as to where they're coming from in terms of, what are the issues that they are seeking to address, be it, schools needing improvements, or the sewers not backing up into their homes, or shuttered storefronts that need to open. And these are all things, again, that as mayors we have to kind of look at everything at once, but getting from the dance floor to the balcony to kind of look around and see everything and see the patterns and recognize, like you said, hear what people are saying is very challenging. And Martin Luther King wrote about this in his book, about how the story of Rip Van Winkle. Rip Van Winkle slept for 20 years, but the real point that he focused on was when Rip went to sleep, it was a picture of the king.
Yeah.
But when he woke up, he saw a picture of George Washington.
Yeah.
And the moral that Dr. King pointed to was people not being awake during the times of change and missing the whole revolution happen. So getting people to engage and focus on hearing each other, I think, is a real challenge. But as a mayor with a family, a young family at that, can you talk to some of the importance of what it means to invest in our young people today?
Absolutely. We need our children to see the promise in their community. One of the challenges we have in Jackson is our greatest exports are our wealth and our talent, right? So we see young people that don't see opportunity right in the midst of them. They see a community that has often appeared to have abandoned them. And so we have to seize on the opportunity of how we engage them and do it early enough that we're producing the things that we need tomorrow. And there's a number of ways we can achieve that. One of the things that you said when you talked about Martin Luther King, you reminded me of what it ultimately is about. Martin had a conversation with Harry Belafonte not long before he died. And he said, listen, Harry, we're going to win this integration struggle, but I'm beginning to fear. I'm beginning to worry that we may be integrating into a burning house. He says, I see a system that abuses labor and abuses working people. And he said, if people can't feed their families, right, if people, if they don't have the money to take care of themselves, then it's senseless to walk across Mississippi roads together. So it ultimately becomes less of a question of color and more a question of ideas, and what are the best ideas and what are the worst ideas. And we have to make certain that as we employ the best ideas, which don't exploit anybody, that we keep our children in mind, that we find ways of engaging them, that we find them when we're talking about innovation today. How are we teaching our children to be the masters of innovation instead of being the victims tomorrow? How do we use the new fabrication technology so that our young people are learning how to command that? Because industry, big industry, is going to fail. The question is who becomes the ones that control it. It used to be that you had to go to General Motors or you had to go to Ford to build a car. Now from a 3D computer you can build it yourself. And so we need to teach our children how to utilize that technology so that they become the thinkers of tomorrow, not the employees of tomorrow, but the thinkers of tomorrow. and how we look at intentional decisions of how we take care of each other in the process. That it's more than just how you profit for yourself, how you build wealth for yourself, but how you consider the community in the process, and how we have businesses that not only look to turn profits, but look to be invested in the community themselves.
So with autonomy, with the autonomous developments in technology, we're losing autonomy. It's a paradox.
Yeah.
And I hear you, and I can't, this is just the beginning. And I really look forward to working with you, learning from you, listening to you, but also leading with you.
Likewise, all of that. All right.
One last thing, sins of omission before we go.
Yeah.
Kids are watching this. What do you tell them to achieve their dreams?
I would tell children that they should, never give up. That they have all of the ability in the world to achieve what they want, and that achieving your talents is not the end. I would remind them of what my father told me. My father told me that our talents are not ours alone. They are the fruit of our labor as a people, belonging to us as a people, and they must be used accordingly. And I would actually challenge them to recognize what their goal must be. I think about Dr. Frantz Fanon, and what Dr. Frantz Fanon wrote in a book, Wretched of the Earth. He said, each generation must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. And so that means that we have great challenges before us. And so as we identify what the mission of our generation is, you and I are in the same generation, we have to step up to the plate, accept it, and make certain that we're leaving ourselves in a better position for the generation that follows us.
We're going to get it done. Build a better tomorrow today.